The people have spoken, and by that I mean NL keeps bugging me about it. So I am going to do a video where I talk about my impressions on the Trails series so far, because if you didn't know, during the Steam Summer Sale, which was like a month ago now, most of the Trails series was on sale. I picked up the first game in the series only during that sale, and since then I have been doing very little other than playing the Trails series. And even with that, I'm still 3.5 games away from being caught up and ready to play the one that's getting its localization released in October. So yeah, I'm gonna just talk about my experience so far. It's basically gonna be like a non-spoiler section and a spoiler section, where the first part is just gonna be me like talking about various things I like and dislike about the games and all that kind of stuff. Like, I guess it's a review, but not really. And then the second part is me going to just kind of gushing about the cool stuff in the story so far, and me theorizing about what's going to happen, which is going to be some great dramatic irony, because I know I'm going to be wrong. Me predicting Future Connected was a complete fluke. I hope you realize that. And, there are a lot of games that still haven't happened yet. But if you've been noticing that the actual screen hasn't changed much, that's because I didn't think of making this video until I was partway through the third game, and I didn't decide on making it until I was on the fifth. So I didn't have anything actually recorded to use as B-roll. And the first 4 games are all versions that were meant for PC, completely designed for it, that I played on PC. The 5th one, the only way to play it in English is as a ROM hack of the PSP version. And I'm not subjecting you guys to super choppy emulator footage of a PSP game. So you're just going to have to deal with this one screenshot that probably accurately represents most of the Xeno fans who don't know what the hell a Trails is. So, yeah, there you go. Anyway, the Trails series is also known as the Kiseki series because that's its Japanese name. They don't mean the same thing, so some people do choose to use the Japanese name even when talking about the English games. Sure, fine, whatever. I'm going to stick with Trails because I want to. Is a sub-series of the Legend of Heroes series, which is a spin-off series of the Dragon Slayer series. Now, Dragon Slayer was instrumental in pioneering the concept of the action RPG way back in the day, which means that Trails is one of the few long-running JRPG series to have started turn-based and still be turn-based in the present day. So I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but I won't be talking about any Dragon Slayer or Legend of Heroes games prior to the first Trails one because, well, that's where I started. All of the main Trails games are connected. They take place in the same world, and that's a lot of games already. There are 9. There's a 10th coming out in Japan this year, but the localization has been at times over a decade late, at times non-existent, and most recently 2 years late. So we're probably not going to see an English version of that game until the next one's at least been announced. But I digress. If you've heard only one thing about Trails, it's probably the word world building, because that's the series' real claim to fame. I like the stories and characters, I like the gameplay, but the world building of the series is the one aspect of it that I have never seen anything remotely like in anything else I've ever played. And that is because of the way the stories are set up in order to facilitate that world building. In terms of scope, while the stories can get epic at times and have earth-shattering consequences and things, the physical scope is relatively small for this kind of thing. It focuses on the western side of a Eurasian-based continent, and that is not unheard of in JRPGs. It's just usually the typical thing you'd think of is saving the entire world and killing God by the end of the first game in your series. But the real big thing is how the scope is very small in time as well. 16 years of real time have passed since the series started. The first game came out in 2004, same year as Xenosaga 2. In universe, maybe 4 years have passed. And instead of following just one set of characters who do an improbable amount of things in a small period of time, the focus instead shifts, and it's split up into multiple story arcs, each focusing around different characters in different countries, and events pertaining specifically to that relatively smaller scale within one country, as well as political and potentially military conflicts with other countries in the continent that you know about from previous games, or the huge amount of supplemental lore material that's available within the games themselves and all that, and an overarching villain plot that I think is supposed to be the main conflict of the series, but I'm not sure because at the point I'm at, a really big political thing's about to happen that has very little to do with it. So, yeah. Each arc is technically self-contained, especially the first one, because that doesn't have callbacks to previous games, but they shine better when you just kind of play them all in order. And that's a problem because of a lot of things. The first arc is the Liberal arc after the kingdom it takes place in. Side note, I have not played a game with English voice acting yet, so I don't know how anything's pronounced, and I didn't look at the katakana, so I apologize in advance for getting everything wrong. So, that's its own trilogy. It's the most self-contained one, though it leaves a lot of dangling threads at the end of the second game, because the first two games are two parts of the same story, basically. I think they were two parts of the same story that were split up. It's a Xenosaga 1 and 2 situation, except the second game is actually good. And then the third game is a bit different because, well, it does follow up on it, and, like, all the party members return. It's instead about a lot of the important characters from the first two games getting stuck in a dream world and having to find their way out. Protagonist duty shifts to a character who is introduced in the second game, and it's largely a character exploration of him and his relationship with a new protagonist who's introduced in that game. It's also a pure dungeon crawler because there are no towns. So I liked it. It's supposed to be quote-unquote the hard one, but I played on normal difficulty, so I had trouble with a couple bosses, and that was it. But plot-wise, it follows up on the first two games a bit less. I would still recommend definitely play it still. It's still a good game, and it explains a couple things that would not make sense in the next game immediately after that. So there's the Liberal arc, which is the 3 Sky games, and then there's the Crossbell arc, which has the concept of, all right, there is this microstate that is a trade hub and has heavily advanced technology. That's also a buffer state between the two biggest superpowers on the western half of the continent that both want to claim it because it's technology and resources and stuff. All right, now be law enforcement officials there. Congratulations, you're the division of the police specifically tasked with actually listening to the citizens because the entire politics system and, like, most of the rest of the police force is in the mafia's pocket. So, yeah, on premise alone, it's pretty interesting. But these are the games that weren't released officially in English. The first game is Zero no Kiseki in Japanese. The common fan name is Trails from Zero. And the second is Ao no Kiseki, fan name Trails to Azure. These are also direct follow-ups, same main cast. Second game follows directly after the first. I am currently on Chapter 2 of Azure as we speak. I am right at the part where you have 6 party members for the first time when Jonah asks you to do stuff. That'll make sense if you've actually played the games. But these only have fan translations because they were never localized. Now, the Sky games, they're all on Steam. I think the PSP versions were even released in English, like, in the late 2010s even, which is really funny because these games took a long time to get localized. Like, they didn't start coming out in English until I think after 2010, even though the series started in 2004. It's that sort of thing. And the localizations are still years delayed because, plot twist, Falcom and its Western publishers do not have Atlas money. And it took Atlas until SMT5 to put out one of its games worldwide release. But I digress. So, what are you going to do? Well, Zero has a direct download PC version that was released in Japan, and you could buy that Japanese version with, I think you need a VPN because I needed it to get the purchase to go through, but you could buy it perfectly legitimately from a Japanese download site. Then there is an amazing fan localization that is basically of the same quality as the really, really good Sky localizations, and they have a patch downloaded for free. If you didn't know about the Geofront Trails from Zero patch, use that. If you want to play Trails from Zero in English, buy a legit Japanese version, and then apply the Geofront patch. It's really good. It gets the PC version. I think this patch only works on a legitimate PC version of the game, or maybe the Japanese PS4 version too. I'm not sure. So that's great. The Azure, the Zero localization is just as good as the first 3 games. But then Azure. The problem with Azure is its only PC release was in China with a ton of DRM on it, and I don't know if it's even possible to legitimately buy that version if you're not in China. It was also released on the PSP, and that's the only version with the fan translation patch. So, yep, you got to do that, apply that to the PSP version, and I don't have a PSP. I've been playing the 4 previous games on PC, and yeah, I'm using a kind of crappy laptop, but they're PSP games, so they run really well on the kind of crappy laptop. Meanwhile, a PSP game on a PSP emulator, even running at like max settings, doesn't compare to it. A lot of people say that Azure is like the best game in the series, but unfortunately, after coming off 4 games that look and run well on my PC, it kind of looks like too much ass for me to probably enjoy it as much as the rest of them. So as good as it is, I'm probably not going to get all I can out of it until some way of playing the HD version of the game is made available, if that version is also in English. So there's that. That is the Crossbell arc, which is just 2 games. And then the most recent one, the one that's still coming out in English, is the Erebonia arc, which is about one of the 2 superpowers that's trying to take over Crossbell. And that's 4 games. That's Trails of Cold Steel 1 through 4. I know very little of anything after what I've played up to because it's a very story-heavy series and I wanted to avoid spoilers, even though I do know a couple things and did know a couple things going into just starting off the series from previous knowledge about stuff. So I don't really know too much about it, but I know Cold Steel is about students at a military academy. And I think the next game, which is Hajimari no Kiseki, probably going to be fan-named Trails of Beginnings or something like that if it doesn't ever come out in the West, which is a real possibility because it happened already. I think it's supposed to be a bridge game between Erebonia and the next arc with 3 stories in it, one of which focuses around the main character of the Erebonia arc, one of which focuses around the main character of the Crossbell arc, and one of which focuses around a completely new character. So I'm not quite sure why they had to do more story about the Erebonia guy to bridge into the next arc and not just include that part at the end of the last Cold Steel game, but I'm sure I'll figure out why that happened when I get there. So, yeah. A lot of world building stuff. That's the general setup. But in terms of story, as for what I've played so far, it's fairly typical JRPG story structure. You're some kids, you start out at level 1, you start out doing small things, and eventually that all connects into some big web of stuff that is a big threat that you eventually have to deal with after making some friends and doing some stuff along the way. There are side quests. In the Sky games, or at least the ones that have NPCs in them, you are members of the Bracer Guild, which is a international organization that's basically like Good Samaritans meet mercenaries. They're not really a military group, but they're combat ready, and they basically just take requests in a completely apolitical civilian sense. Like, is a strong monster doing something? The Bracers will kill that. Is someone missing? The Bracers will do that. But they're not like law enforcement. They're just kind of people who help out, but are not mercenaries. And then in the Crossbell games, you play as a police division that was basically, what if we did the Bracers also? So it's the same dynamic there. You do jobs, and that's how you get money, other than selling items. So there's that. And there is a lot of dialogue in these games. There are times when it approaches a visual novel with JRPG gameplay as well. One of my main theses about this entire thing is, if you like all of the Xeno games, you will find something to like in Trails, because there are things resembling stuff like that in the Trails games. So, what does that mean? Well, I'm going to just talk about the combat system, because that's an important part about JRPGs. There's a lot of dialogue, but you're still doing gameplay, which is mostly combat, like half the time at least. Probably more so. It is a turn-based battle system where characters are on a grid. It's usually 17 by 17, but I found a couple times in the Crossbell games where it's smaller because you're in a more confined space. And your characters have like normal JRPG stats, and they also have a movement stat. So they can move a certain number of squares, and the enemies can move a certain number of squares. And most of the time, it's just, alright, walk up to the enemy and hit the enemy. But there are positional-based abilities. So you might have something that will target a certain enemy, but also a certain radius around that enemy, so any other enemies near your target will get hit. Or you might have an ability that is a line, or it's also a circular area of defined radius, but you set that circle at some point within your range, and it affects everything in that circle as opposed to being centered on a target. So there is positional-based combat in a JRPG. That sounds like Xenoblade, doesn't it? And it's turn-based, and you have a little slot on the left side of the screen showing the turn order and who's coming up next. And there are also special events that change things, like heal a little bit of HP, deal a critical hit, that kind of thing, that show up and will give those bonuses to whoever's turn it is when that shows up. And you also have a special ability that allows you to cut into the turn order so you can steal the good bonuses. Wow, that's Xenosaga's battle slots. And also, in the first Sky game, the party is a massive revolving door besides a couple protagonists. Wow, that's like the first half of Xenogears. You see what I'm getting at? And, like, by the way, in terms of world building, the best way I could describe it to a Xeno fan is, alright, do you like Xenoblade X for the world building, but wish the plots actually had resolution? Play Trails. Also, as a side note, just so you know, this series is far from finished. It's been going on for the better part of 2 decades now. It's got a new game coming out. It's going to launch into a new arc soon, and that arc is probably going to be multiple games, and that's not going to be the final arc. Like, I'm going to just say, if you feel daunted getting into One Piece because it's been going on for so long and is seemingly so far from the end still, which, by the way, I also got into and really liked One Piece. That also happened 2020. That was pre-quarantine, so imagine what I'm like when I actually have nothing else to do other than play these games, and I'm still only halfway there. But the difference between One Piece and Trails is One Piece is probably going to finish within the next decade, most likely within the next half decade. Trails is probably not going to finish for another decade and then some. So if you don't want to be in it for the long haul, then maybe play just the Sky games and dip, because things are far from completely finished, even if individual character arcs or the stories of individual countries or taking down certain villains is actually done by the end of a game or an arc. So yeah. Another cool Xeno-like thing that's in the gameplay system is the way your magic works. Basically, another backstory premise of this world that I didn't talk about at all because, yeah, is the fact that the games take place like 50 years after an industrial revolution. And I don't just mean something like the industrial revolution that happened in the real world. I mean a clean source of energy that's like seemingly renewable, more powerful than any non-renewable or renewable energy sources we have in the real world, and capable of providing advancements a lot faster than happened in the real world. That was discovered about 50 years ago. Flash forward to the present day. You got cars, you got airships, the internet is invented in the Crossbell games. It's a weird combination of steampunk, mid-1900s America, and like futuristic stuff that doesn't exist yet even. So I think that's really cool and compelling, but basically the way you do magic isn't just by characters knowing magic. It's a special piece of technology these characters carry, and it's like, oh, each character has their own device, and it's specifically tuned to their character, which is why they all function a little differently. And by inserting quartz into the device, you can enhance your stats and give yourself special abilities, and it's basically the gem system from Xenoblade 1, but those gems, depending on the kind and the orientation of which you equip them to your characters, also determines what magic they have access to. So that's really neat. There's a lot of things. If you like at least one Xeno game, there's at least one aspect of the series that you'll like. That doesn't necessarily mean you'll like the series. It's extremely dialogue heavy. There are a lot of tropes still, and you got to sift through a lot to get to the good stuff, which isn't really a criticism. I just mean you're going to be pressing A over dialogue boxes a lot, and sometimes less interesting things happen, but overall, it is very interesting. Also, word of warning, the 2 arcs I have played so far have very slow starts, but if you like Xenosaga, you don't mind slow starts, so you'll probably be okay with this. Basically, what I'm saying is, if you like all the Xeno games, there's a decent chance you'll like Trails. Yeah. So, like, as for criticisms, I'm not gonna lob the PSP graphics criticism at them because, well, I'm playing these games in 2020, and they did not come out in 2020. Even the game that is coming out in 2020 for PS4 came out in 2018 originally, and, like, yeah, I know the Cold Steel games don't actually look that great, even by modern console standards. Again, smaller budget. I'm used to, like, Xenoblade. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe the environment design is really good in Cold Steel too. I don't know about that. Because it's the 5 games I've played so far were all isometric sprites that seem to be digitized 3D models on 3D backgrounds in an isometric setting. I'm used to that. It's going to be weird jumping to actual graphics at some point. So there's that. There's also a lot of really obtuse stuff. Like, there's a book series that's a bit more lore, foreshadowing, or symbolism that's extremely difficult to obtain, and there's one in each game that's different, and you're just going to look up those on the internet. The fact that you have to talk to every NPC after every story beat in order to get everything can be really annoying sometimes, especially because there are a lot of hidden side quests that way, and you get a ranking as for your characters, like, because they're a member of an organization that does requests for people, and the more side quests you do, you get points, you rank up, you get a new title, you get some reward items, and you gotta do some completely hidden quests. Like, you get a quest board that you can look at and accept side quests, so you know what side quests there are, but there are plenty of ones that are completely hidden, and there's no way of knowing that there's going to be one, because there are no exclamation marks over the characters' heads like in Xenoblade. So it is very difficult to, like, actually accomplish everything and get the highest rank without a guide. The difficulty is also really swingy, honestly. Like, the characters, like, have a special ability. It's their strongest ability. They get, like, 2, maybe 3 throughout the course of multiple games. Like, in the entire Sky trilogy, I think only a couple characters have 3, and most of them only have 2. And that's the ability. You know what? I'm just going to talk about the entire combat system. So you got the grid-based movement, and you can do your attacks and stuff, and your special abilities are arts and crafts, because of course they are. Arts are the magic, which is dependent on the quartz layout, and crafts are character-specific things. So for arts, you just straight up have magic points. They're called EP, which I don't know why they're called EP, because the device you use is an orbment. The quartz are made out of something called septium, which is formed from sepith crystals. I guess it's just energy points, because it can't be ether. But yeah, so that just works the same way that any other RPG magic does, except they actually bring back the casting time mechanic. So if you use an art, it actually takes 2 turns effectively. When you input the command and choose your target and whatever, you go into a casting animation and your turn ends. You then get another turn a bit down the line, which is when the art is actually cast. And different arts, usually the more powerful ones, have longer time it takes to cast, so you lose out on more turns, or more turns will pass until you get to cast the art. And of course, there's also quartz that reduces your cast time, so there's a bunch of stuff like that. And there's also, like, a quartz that gives you more turns effectively, and all that kind of stuff, so that's cool. And then crafts use a different resource called CP, or craft points, which is basically take damage, deal damage, you get points, you spend points on crafts. Sometimes crafts also get you CP for performing them because you do damage while you do them. And there are also accessories in, like, every game that are extremely broken, because one of them increases the amount of CP you gain, and one of them automatically gives you a few CP every turn, so you can basically be spamming your best crafts the entire time. And then there's the S-Craft, which is basically a character's signature move. They've got their own flashy attacks. They're the mystic arts of the game. And they're also the things that you can use to override the turn order. So you can only use them if you have 100 or more CP, yada yada, and there's a special command where you can use your S-Craft to cut in at any point in time, and that's how you steal. You could use it like the boosting in Xenosaga to steal the good effects on the battle roulette. And that sort of is what makes the game really swingy, because in every arc so far, there's a character with an S-Craft that has the ability of, for a certain range that covers basically the entire battlefield, it will cure status conditions from your entire party. It will give them a huge amount of HP, up to full if you use it when your CP gauge is maxed out. And it will also revive them, possibly to full health. And this is an S-Craft, so you can use it at any point you want. You can just choose, this is the next turn that happens. So, yeah, I feel like there were some encounters that were designed basically around, and this is on normal, mind you, and I didn't, like, uber strategize a lot. Like, most regular fights were still won just by holding down the attack button and automatically advancing. You have to think on boss battles and stuff, and there is a system sort of similar to Unique Monsters where for certain side quests there's going to be a harder version of an enemy, or like a couple instances of that in one combat encounter, and sometimes that is actually an enemy from a much later area of the game, just leveled down a little bit, and sometimes it's just a completely unique thing with its own gimmick. There are also earthquake worms, which show up in every game and started just kind of being annoying and not hard after like the third time they showed up. But anyway, that makes combat really swingy because I can be almost dead, then choose, all right, the S-Craft is the thing that goes next, and then I will be perfectly fine and back to winning the fight. It's like they have a song that overrides the normal battle theme and some minor boss themes in most cases, where if you're in trouble, like if it's a 4-person party size max, if 2 people are down or everyone's on low health, a really panicked song will start sounding. But like every time that happens, usually I have a party member who either has an S-Craft that completely shields the party from damage for 1 hit, or an S-Craft that completely revives the party, and I can choose whenever to use that. So it's like, oh no, the bad music's coming on. All right, time to press the I win button. Oh, the good music's back. And then, like, almost to counteract that, this happened a lot more in Crossbell. Like, Sky the Third, it happened a bit, but it was supposed to be the difficult one, and they added, like, some additional slots into the roulette, like your attack will do instant death now. If you use it on this turn, every enemy you hit will be instantly killed, except a lot of enemies later on in that game have insta-death resistance, so it's usually just, alright, guess I need to equip the insta-death resist equipment to my characters now. So there's that, and sure, that's like almost fake difficulty, but like, they kind of load, this is mostly problem in Zero so far, they just kind of decided to give half the enemies in the game insta-death attacks partway through Zero. I don't really know why. It's very fake difficulty, and it just meant that I was going to spam that one ability even more often, which was weird. I didn't really like that. I feel like some of the difficulty is fake. A lot of it is very legitimate. There were a couple times when I was definitely not strategizing hard enough, and my plan for a fight ended up just being, all right, I'm going to mash the protective S-Craft because I know this character is going to do an attack that will probably kill 2 of my 4 party members immediately, and I just could just avoid that. And the actual solution was that attack has a very small AoE, and I had my characters bunched up together because you can determine where on the battlefield your characters will start. And it just happened to hit all of them and kill a couple of them, when if I just spread them out, only 1 maybe would die at most. So it's stuff like that, but it's a bit wonky with difficulty. It's probably a bit more balanced on the harder difficulties. Okay, so they have 4 difficulties: easy, normal, hard, nightmare. Hard seems to be the fair hard mode, and nightmare seems to be the BS hard mode. So I feel like, if anything, hard is the most balanced difficulty. And it might be less swingy than it is, or it might just be whoever can curb stomp the other side the first, because I've actually had some drawn out boss fights that went back and forth, but I have also had ones where I curb stomp the boss because would I say the difficulty curve is bad? I don't really think so. Like, you're never grinding too much. I've never really had to level grind. I just kind of fought enemies as they came by. Oh, by the way, no random encounters. Enemies you encounter on the overworld. And it's sort of like Earthbound, where if they hit you from the back, they get a free set of turns. And if you hit them from the back, you get a free set of turns. And in the Crossbell games, you can also attack enemies on the overworld. And if you hit them from the back, you get basically an additional set of turns where your first 4 attacks are all crits. And then, again, like an Earthbound thing, if the enemies are weak enough and you hit them twice, they'll just die and you'll get their drops automatically. And by the way, I like the way they handled money in theory, because you only get direct money payment from selling things and from doing jobs. Enemies drop items that can be sold, but they don't drop money. The main resource with that is something I alluded to before, which is Sepith, which is basically the thing that they use to make the quartz. And you collect those drop from enemies. You could like find it in chests and stuff too. And you can either refine that to upgrade your orbments, which gives you more quartz slots, and that is what increases your MP. And later games let you upgrade the slot, which lets you put better quartz in. But you can also sell those. So it's a toss-up between, do I want more money or do I want more quartz? Because you can't buy quartz, you can only refine them. So that's a nice thing, and I think that's a really cool gameplay idea. But I was always broke and out of Sepith because I needed it to upgrade the quartz as much as possible. And even then, I would still have to exchange a bunch of it for money too. Oh, by the way, the money is called Mira, which is always funny because haha X. But I always found myself broke and like barely able to cover the cost for a weapon, a set of armor, and a set of shoes for each character. And it gets kind of ludicrous because you know how I said the series has a massive cast? Well, that is playable too. Trails in the Sky the Third has 16 party members. That is almost as much as X. And I wanted to use all of them relatively balanced. So I had to buy equipment for each of them every time new equipment happened. And I never had enough money for that. So I feel like it's just, you need to balance the money better. Maybe the game expects me to grind more than I have been because I'm playing on normal and I'm decent enough at RPGs where the bosses I get stuck on and look at later to see if other people were stuck on, they were always some of the hardest bosses in the game apparently. So I don't feel bad about that. I just feel like they could have balanced the in-game economy a bit better, either by giving you more money or by making things cheaper. I don't know. Maybe I'm not exchanging Sepith as often, but I think it's a weird thing. But yeah, another criticism I guess you could have is that the combat system doesn't really evolve a whole lot as things go on. Like, you start out with arts crafts and S crafts. That is the basic thing in the first Sky game. The second Sky game introduces one new craft mechanic that's basically, alright, you can do multiple regular attacks in one turn, but it costs way more CP than the amount of damage is worth. And then they also added one more quartz slot and a bunch of new arts. So, sure, increase the magic system, that's fine. And then Sky the Third is literally the same system as second chapter, just with a few more spells added. And it works, it's fine, but that was 3 games, very little changed throughout them, and there were a lot of very broken spells. Crossbell, I think, was more balanced, and by that I mean they got rid of the spell that was the S-Craft I talked about where you could just avoid damage for one hit. There was an art version of that too that just affected a smaller area. They just kind of completely removed that from the Crossbell games because that was kind of broken, and you could use that to very easily wall your way through if you just had one person designed to spam cast. Just keep doing that and you just kind of never lose. Also, stat buffs lasted a really, really long time in those games. Like, I think they might have lasted either until death or until like 10 turns passed. Meanwhile, Crossbell, most of the time they last like 4 turns max, and you can actually see that on the characters. It's nice quality of life. But I'm on Trails to Azure. Trails from Zero had less quartz options than Sky the Third, which I thought was weird. And I think it also had less arts available, but they like completely rebalanced all the arts, took out a lot of them, added some new ones. I like the fact that quartz, again, back like to gems in Xenoblade 1, comes in different colors, and it's the set of different color values and how they're arranged that gives you the different arts. I like the fact that the single person healing and the multiple person healing were split between 2 different colors in the Crossbell games. So it might be possible to have someone who has like a really high arts stat so they could do a lot of damage in healing with arts, which, by the way, healing arts healed specified numbers of HP in the Sky games, which just didn't work because you could just kind of throw a couple heals on everyone and just kind of heal easily. Meanwhile, it seems to actually go off your magic stat in Crossbell. So that's, again, more balanced, and not everyone can just stack healing spells so you never die. So that's nice. But I liked how you actually had to invest a bit more if you wanted to do AoE and single person healing, which is nice. And that's pretty cool. Let's see. I don't really have too much more to talk about gameplay because Azure introduced like the biggest shakeup yet, which was going back to 6 quartz, but also each character has a 7th slot that's by a special site type of quartz that levels up and gets increased abilities too, which I don't know if I like it or not. I think it's going to become a mainstay after this, but I'm not entirely sure. And then it also introduced basically chain attacks, which is only available in certain story segments, and I've only gotten to 1 story segment with it, and I didn't really need it to get through that story segment. I just kind of used it to spam regular attacks when the boss was almost dead. So I don't really know about that. But let's see. I don't think I can give my story thoughts without spoiling everything. So basically, if you're a big Xeno fan, you will probably find something to like in this. If you don't mind the fact that this story is not going to be resolved until it's 30 years old, I jump right in. Like, again, going back to One Piece, because this is also something very fresh in my mind, I binged through the entire series in like a month or two. And now that I'm caught up, I'm like agonizingly waiting every week or two for each new chapter. And I'm like, wow, that sure, when you're reading them one at a time with several weeks between them, what is in one chapter sure isn't a lot. It's probably different because video games are much longer and they have replay value in different ways. I have not replayed any of the games yet, but apparently they have some good New Game Plus bonuses and all that stuff. But I don't know. Once I'm caught up, will it be agonizing waiting for the next game? And will I just be like, all right, this was just part one of an arc. I need more, sort of thing. I don't know. We'll see how that gets there. That's a problem for me once I finish the last 5 games, I think, is the best way to look at that. Because I'm enjoying myself so far. I definitely want to keep going. I think Cold Steel 1 and 2 are like the least regarded by fans, I think. But I'm not entirely sure. So, yeah. It's worth checking out if you're a Xeno fan. I think that's going to be my thing. There are not really similar themes. Like, it's more of political intrigue than big symbolism type stuff. Like, some things have similar names. Like, Merkaba shows up, Gnosis shows up, Pleroma shows up. Basically, there are a lot of things from Xenosaga that show up. But that's more of a naming thing than intentional symbolism as far as I've seen so far. There's also the church is there. It doesn't seem to be evil, just shady, but ultimately good. And that's kind of interesting. And it's kind of weird. Usually in this kind of world, there is not really a big emphasis on religion, but because we're only in the early 1200s of this world's character, it's basically like, what if the Industrial Revolution happened in the 1100s? And that means that the church is still an important mainstay of everyone's life. And it seems that basically everyone you meet is a follower of the same monotheistic religion, which I think is just interesting in terms of story ideas. Usually, even in a setting like this, if you're going to have heavy religion, there's going to be multiple gods of some way. But yeah, by the way, the whole calendar starting 1200 years ago, nothing similar to the reason why our calendar starts 2020 years ago. It was the collapse of an ancient civilization that ushered in a dark age because JRPGs, and that civilization was based around the same technology that started the Industrial Revolution. So that's all cool. Like, oh, they got even further than we did with this technology. We're still figuring it out, partially based on their stuff, because we don't even know how their stuff works. And every time we discover something of theirs, it's important. And there's all memory logs from the past and that kind of thing. And also from One Piece, the only character we know about existing in that past civilization before the collapse has the middle initial D, which I have to think was intentional at this point, because we never learn what that D stands for either. Also, there's a D that stands for something in Crossbell that I'm not sure what it stands for yet. But, yeah. As for characters, because I feel like I haven't talked about characters or plot yet, only world building. Like, the characters are good. A lot of them are very tropey, but they're entertaining. The humor in the series is actually pretty good. And it's not just for the callback's sake that I get really happy when I see a Sky character show up again in Crossbell. Like, I knew about a couple that came back, but I didn't know about all of them. And I'm at a moment where a bunch of characters come back and interact with the new cast, and that's always really nice to see. Yeah, I thought I had more to that thought, but a lot of the characters are really generic, but a thing that is kind of interesting is characters that you would not expect to become playable do become playable. Now, this is a lot more the case in Sky, because you're a much looser party. A lot of the characters are bracers, the main protagonists are, but not everyone is. Meanwhile, in Crossbell, you are a police unit, is the main 4 characters, and you might be joined by a guest sometimes, up to 2 max. So there's that. So it's a bit less, oh wow, I wasn't expecting that character to become playable thing. But when it happens, it's really cool. It seems to be a tradition now, going from Sky second chapter, that right at the end, or the last couple characters you get in a game, you'll get a pair of characters who you wouldn't expect to join the party. And it's a really cool moment every single time, because you knew from prior events that, yeah, those are badasses. I'd love to see them playable, but they seem to have relatively minor roles in the story. But lo and behold, no, you get to play with them. Only problem is, I thought that, oh, you get some two really badass characters right near the end of Sky's second chapter. I should use them for the rest of the game. Well, first off, there was a mini boss rush of like 4 bosses that all had ties, personal ties to other characters in the party, and you had to swap them out to get that dialogue, because only the characters with the protagonists at that time would actually show up in the cutscenes. And also, those characters weren't very good because I had spent an entire game building up the rest of the party and like finding the right court setup for them, while these guys joined with some of their own, and I had to fill out the rest of what I had left. So they weren't actually very good and made some of the last fights, including the final boss, a lot more difficult than they should have been. But that is more my fault than anything. And it's weird because I like big parties, but only when they're done well, and a lot of characters have some connection to other ones, and others don't interact a lot because they don't really know each other or don't have like a lot of chemistry together. The comedy is really good when it happens. I have legitimately laughed a lot of times. I have legitimately cheered in my seat when certain story events happen. So like, it does the epic, it does the funny, it just doesn't do the original when it comes to characterization a lot. Plot points, some things are more original than others. I will definitely say that. Like, steampunk airship and internet existing at the same time isn't something I've seen too often, so that's cool. And it's, again, more the world building that's interesting. The plot twists are relatively easy to see coming in the context of the plot of one game. But in the context of, oh, I wasn't expecting that politician to make a power move and do that, or I didn't know those people were conspiring with each other, or I didn't know that person was actually an intelligence agent or actually royalty. It's more that kind of thing than actual story events, if that makes sense. The stories themselves are fairly generic, but the whole is much greater than the sum of its parts. So I would recommend, unless you really hate whatever first game you play as, at least finish that arc, because there's a lot of very satisfying send-off, at least in terms of the Sky arc. But yeah, that's all I got for the non-spoiler stuff, so I'm just going to kind of ramble about the actual plots of the games and where I think things are going to go. So, spoilers up to the point where I've played now, so if you are considering getting into the series, go away. Alright, so I'm just going to go in order, and it's been a month where I was mostly just playing Trails since I started playing Trails, so earlier games I'm going to forget some stuff, and I'm sorry. Now, I had watched plot summaries of, I think, up through Azure at some point, because I knew some stuff, but it was mostly about Sky, a little bit about Zero, and nothing about Azure other than it was sequel to Zero, so I knew some things going on. I knew the big plot twist at the end of Sky First Chapter, so I don't know if that colored my experience. I don't think it did, because it was somewhat of a, alright, I think that this plot twist only happened right at the end, so it's going to be interesting seeing how we get there type thing, as an, alright, that ruined the entire thing, because the whole Joshua thing wasn't necessarily the biggest thing that happened at the end. It was more the reveal of Ouroboros being like, alright, yeah, you know that main villain from this game, and how obviously he wasn't gonna be a recurring thing, because I like Richard's character. He's in terms of his plotline through the entire series, he's a better redeemed villain than a lot of the villains that Xeno tries to redeem. I want to make a video about this at some point, but Xeno has a tendency to, like, redeem characters too much. Now, the one character that you're probably thinking of that a lot of people think I don't like, I'm not talking about that character there. I'm more talking about one of the villains from Gears, one of the villains from Saga who definitely doesn't deserve any redemption, a few characters who did some awful things, but the game and the character seem to completely forgive them. Like, there's a character in Xenogears who wants to genocide humanity, and near the end of the game, the characters come to the conclusion that maybe he loved humanity more than anyone else. I'm talking about that kind of bullshit. Richard is a lot better handled than that. I'll say that much. But what I'm saying is, yeah, he clearly wasn't going to be the main villain of any future game because of circumstances. So, honestly, the reveal of Ouroboros being this thing was a bigger plot twist than the Joshua thing, although I kind of knew about that already because, like, if he was a member of the secret society that shows up in other games, then that secret society must be important. I don't know if Ouroboros is actually the main villains of the series, by the way. Like, I'm still in Azure when the first Crossbell game, I mean, Ren was there, but that was about it. There was the doll maker who was like a factory employee, but they could be completely destroyed. Actually, no, that's not true. I have seen trailers for Cold Steel 3, and apparently Campanella is in there. Because, goddammit, Campanella is everywhere. But, I don't know. Maybe they're completely destroyed by the end of the Cold Steel series, and someone else completely takes over the antagonist role. They're clearly setting up the Chancellor of Erebonia as big bad territory, but I'm assuming he's going to be the big political villain that's, like, handled in the Erebonia arc, because I'm at the point where Olivier is like, alright, let's do something about him, try to reduce his influence. But anyway, basically, Sky First Chapter is really slow at times. And yeah, the Estelle and Joshua romance is kind of creepy. At some point after playing the game, I watched Linkara's review because I knew someone paid Linkara to review Sky First Chapter for some reason, and I just kind of wanted to see his thoughts on it, and his was like, yeah, it's fine. But he hasn't played a lot of JRPGs. I think he joked about it himself. Like, he likes Pokemon. I don't know how many other RPGs he played. He said it was okay, but it was also very clear that from a lot of things that it just wasn't for him. But he also hasn't played a lot of JRPGs, which means he hasn't played bad a lot cases. So it definitely gets worse than Sky First Chapter. Keep in mind, he said that he might be interested in the sequels, which, like, is a good sign from someone who doesn't usually play that kind of game. Like, alright, you got Linkara interested in it, but sure, he likes big complex stories and that kind of thing. He's a superhero comics guy. You're not going to get Scott the Woz to play Trails. That's actually good. Another thing that I should have emphasized, if you're still here, I don't know why you don't know that's the word, but this is not a series for everyone. If you play Sky First Chapter and are completely turned off of it, don't bother with second. It might not be enough to convince you. I think second chapter is a lot better in most cases, but if you didn't like one, don't slog through two to hopefully get to a game you like at some point. I will slog through the first two Cold Steel games if they're actually not great, because I'm invested at this point. And also because I liked the first 5 games. So, there's that. But yeah, back to the Estelle Joshua romance. Yeah, it was kind of weird. I, like, the fact that he said, no, I've always loved you. I don't know if that really changes anything, or the fact that Joshua always saw him being part of the family as temporary is weird. Like, after he comes back, he goes back to being Joshua Bright, like, but he and Estelle are openly dating, even though they have the last... It's kind of weird. I'm not going to deny that, but, like, I get... Does the romance work? Like, as for 16-year-olds who are unable to spit it out, it works. It doesn't get too cringy for the most part. Even they have a love triangle and it isn't shit. Like, I'll give the game that much. And they resolve the love triangle well. They're like, because Sky the Third takes place 6 months after, I think throughout the entire Sky series, it takes about a year roughly. Because let's see, first chapter takes a few weeks at least. Then there's a month time skip between the end of the beginning of second chapter. Then that takes a decent amount of time. And then third chapter 6 months later. But basically what I'm saying is the love triangle is handled decently, and characters still having trouble getting over each other later on is handled reasonably well. The more creepy stuff is everyone thinks Agate and Tita are a couple, even though she's 13 and he's, I think, in his 20s. That is a little uncomfortable, not because people are teasing him about that. I think he's the kind of character who everyone likes to tease, so I don't really mind that. But I mind the fact that some people are, like, okay with the idea that they are actually a couple, so that's a little weird. Just the straight up perverted characters, I don't mind that because they're not like outright creepy or harmful or misogynistic in any way. They're just perverted. Like, do I mind Olivier? Not really, because he's on his bullshit with everyone, and I think he's like 18 when he's flirting with Joshua, who's 16. So, yeah, sure. If you want to be a massive pansexual flirt who wants everyone, then go ahead and do that. It's entertaining for the most part. I really love that. That's another thing. Skipping around again, which I'm not really going chronological order at this point. I'm sorry. I kind of hate how Joshua and Estelle look like in the Zero art style. They just don't look like themselves. All the other characters that show up, they look fine. And by that I mean, like, I'm playing Azure, where you got Mueller, you got Olivier, you got Julia, you got Chloe, a lot more people. They all look like themselves in a different art style. Joshua and Estelle look like completely different characters. Maybe Joshua got a different haircut because his hair does look completely different, and that might be part of it. But they also turned his hair a light purple for some reason, so I don't know why that happened. Also, I just thought that Mueller's original portrait didn't look great because his chin was way too thin, so it looked like his mouth was covering his entire face, which, yeah, I think that was... I really liked the art style used for the portraits in the Sky games. Like, I think I do like it more than the one they used for Crossbell, so I'm not complaining about that. I just thought that he himself didn't look too great. So, yeah, I knew about the Joshua plot twist, but very little else, because I know I watched a plot summary and the Linkara review prior to playing the game, and the Linkara review didn't even talk about the ending plot twist too much, and he glossed over a lot because he was also talking, like, explained the entire combat system. So I don't know where I learned the ending plot twist, but didn't remember much else. I liked how Maybell and Lila got progressively gayer for each other as the series went on. Like, it just started out with, like, all right, they're close friends. Then it started, like, with, oh, Maybell's family took Lila in, and now she wants to go visit her maid's parents in another country. And then it just eventually caps off with the, oh, she's jealous when she thinks she's in a relationship. And then, like, even Annalise ships them by the end. I think that's really funny, honestly. Like, that's just a good character dynamic in general, and they played it really well and, like, in a respectful way. Gilbert is also great. I would hesitate to call him the Juju of the series, but he does get crucified in the third, so I think he is the Juju of the series. It's not really much to talk about, really. Yeah, first chapter is it's there. It's not even mostly setup. It's mostly self-contained up until, like, the end, the last 20 minutes of the game where it goes wild. But yeah, it's fine. It's a lot better knowing that it's, like, the first third or the first 2/5 of a story. On its own, I'd probably be a bit let down, but it's fine. Don't really mind that because I knew there was going to be another game. I didn't know I would be playing the next game when I first got it and started playing it, which is why I only got that one on sale and had to pay full price for the rest of the games. Actually, no. Zero was half off when I happened to buy it from the Japanese website for a completely different reason than Steam Summer Sale. So, yeah, it's gonna suck paying full price for all the Cold Steel games on PS4 because my goddamn laptop can't run them as well as a PS4 can. So that's unfortunate. I would like to have them all in one place, but what are you gonna do? Actually, that's beside the point because I think Hajimari is releasing exclusively on PS4 in Japan, so it might not even come to PC. That's a weird... Trail's not coming to PC. I think most of them started out on PC. I'm not sure. Cold Steel might have been console. I don't bloody know. I don't know where I'm going with this. So, second chapter, it was really good. I liked how they made Kurt playable just for one little side quest. They actually went out of their way to do that, which I thought was kind of cool. But then Annalise just didn't stay playable, even though she had her own abilities and stuff, which I thought was weird. I don't know too much about that. There's a lot of filler in first chapter's plot, but I don't dislike it as much as the worst parts of second chapter's plot, because second chapter's plot is really formulaic. Like, half of the game is go to place, bad thing happen in place, find Ouroboros person, talk to Ouroboros person. You have party member, talk to Ouroboros person who happens to have beef with them personally. You fight them, you get completely overwhelmed, then you move on to next region. And that happens many times. The dragon coming out of nowhere is great. I love when dragons are treated with respect in these games. They're not just like, yeah, that's a thing that exists out there. It's like, no, finding your first dragon is event. Fighting your first dragon is event. Beating your first dragon is event. And like, obviously you don't beat the dragon, and he was under mind control the entire time. But yeah, that's beside the point. Are the enforcers good? I don't know. I really like Ren because she's in more than everyone else. But let's see. I do not think Luciola is dead. Walter is going to come back if there's ever a Calvard arc, because Zin is going to be important in the Calvard arc. I know that much. Who else do you fight? Wow, Luciola, I already said she isn't dead. Who's the fourth one? Shit, I actually feel bad now. Blue Blanc. Freaking Joker, but better. He's entertaining. I think he's funny. I love how... fast forwarding again to Zero, I like how you can talk to some NPCs and they'll talk about how Phantom Thief B has been sighted and does stuff while Ren is tagging along behind Lloyd, and she doesn't say shit about him, which I think is really funny. Like, she acknowledges him later on, but I think it's funny that she doesn't... They just do a cutaway to her, just like, ... which... There's a lot of good attention to detail in the series, and just kind of surprised that didn't happen. Let's see. The first Ren fight was a bitch, because that's the one where my characters were all bunched up, and her S-Craft, which she's like, all the enforcers start their first fight using their S-Craft, and Ren's has a chance of causing insta-kill, and it hit all of my characters and killed at least 2 of them every time. So my strategy became, can I pop Kevin's S-Craft before she does that, so no one dies? And then it became trivial once I was able to actually do that. So that was pretty funny. Let's see. I can see why it would get annoying, but I really like Estelle and Josette's dynamic of, like, even when they're about to have a moment and acknowledge that they're not so bad and, like, no, we're actually cool, they end up finding a way to bicker. I think that's really funny, honestly. They clearly respect each other. They're clearly, like, sort of friends in a way, and Josette, like, clearly doesn't give a shit that her and Joshua are together. I think most of her saying, oh no, if you ever get tired of her, you can come back to me, is just to troll Estelle, so I think that's really funny. Kevin is great. Like, he was just kind of there in second chapter, although I knew ahead of time that, like, he's going to become really important in the next game, but I think it's I also think Kevin is funny. All right, he's the one who's a bit creepier because, like, he's 21 and he's still hitting on the 16-year-olds. Olivier, 18 and 16, that's a 2-year age gap. I've been in relationships with a 2-year age gap before. That's not really a big deal. But, like, 21 and 16, 5-year age gap. That's not 5. That's 4. That's 5. That's 5. Never mind. I can't math. 5-year age gap is weird when one of them is 16 and one of them is 21. That's what I'm saying. So that's a little funny. A little weird. But as a character, he's actually really cool. He has sort of backstory reason for being that flirtatious. Let's see. Did he even Shara? I haven't talked about Shara at all. She's there. She's kind of underwhelming for being like, oh, you were a protege of Cassius, but she doesn't really do anything that cool. Like, Agate has more moments than her, and he's lower ranked, which is, I mean, I don't dislike any of the main cast, like any of the party members in any of the games so far. I just think, like, some of them are a bit underwhelming. Like, she's entertaining, but she's better bouncing off of other characters than on her own. Like, her torturing Olivier is funny. Her on her own, she's there. She's a nice supportive friend character, and she has some sweet moments. But yeah, Tita, obviously, cinnamon roll too good for this world, too pure. That goes without saying. I somehow didn't realize Chloe was the princess until right before it was revealed. Like, I thought she was going to be a noble or a royal guard in training. Like, there are some scenes where it's like, all right, she has a close connection to Julia, who's the captain of the royal guard. I thought, based on the rapier and, like, her uniform, that she was going to be a royal guard in training or something. That was her Julia connection. No, she's just a princess. I mean, I like royals who do something. I like Morag. I like Niall. I like Bart. Bart is God, actually. I mean, Bart and Zeke, but you know what I mean. I like her character, but I don't know. That's not how you spell Chloe. I've known multiple Chloes. None of them spelled it that way, so the fictional character is the one who's wrong, clearly. Like I said, Agate is also really generic, but he has some cool moments. Zin, I don't know about Zin. Like, it's weird because I really love how games that directly follow up on each other keep your levels the same. And I actually really like the progress system of, no, if you transfer your save data over from first chapter into second chapter, your character levels will start out the same, at least for the early game characters to join. It's the magic system that's reset, and that has to start over from 0, but since your orbments are more powerful, you're still doing damage and healing on par with the characters, and you grow into the advanced magic. And then the third just kind of says, yeah, these spells do different things this time. But, yeah, Zin is one of those characters who should be a lot higher level than he is. He has to stay within the level 50 cap of the first game, so he's only like level 30, and you catch up to him by the end of the game, but you're nowhere near actually caught up to him and stuff. Like, I think Estelle and Joshua are still supposed to be weaker than Shara at the end of second chapter, which makes no goddamn sense. They're supposed to be weaker than Zin, at least, still by the end of the third, which I don't really know about that. Again, Joshua's an enforcer. It's apparently supposed to take 4 party members a lot of effort to beat an enforcer after all of second chapter, and they've got Mueller and Julia with them, who are supposed to be, like, gods. So I don't really know. Like, it's kind of weird flip-flopping between Estelle and Joshua are weak bracers, and no one can fight an enforcer except maybe Cassius himself, but then Estelle and Joshua beat all of the enforcers, but they're still weaker than some of the other bracers. I don't know. Power scaling's a little wonky, but goddamn Campanella. Why is Campanella... I'm not fully convinced Campanella isn't also the Grandmaster, because he's the only person who's everywhere and actually knows everything and, like, is capable of holding a Septarion. I don't know how that works. I was also partially under the assumption that that at least so far each arc focused on one Septarion. I'm not sure about that. As for where I'm at, there are some hints that there might be one in Crossbell or connected to Crossbell or having something to do with Crossbell. I'm not entirely sure. But what else about second chapter? I was okay with first chapter locking you out of previous areas because that was the point of your journey as junior bracers. I didn't like how second chapter just completely gated you out from going to other regions of the kingdom, even though you've been everywhere at this point in the previous game, and how the only time you get free reign of the kingdom is during the orbital shutdown phenomenon, when you need to take up a character's equipment slot in order to use arts. And by the way, that segment kind of sucked because orbital shutdown phenomenon means there's no airships, which means there's no fast travel, which means you're hoofing it around all of Liberl, which isn't very fun, and not being able to use arts isn't very fun, and the fact that there are a bunch of hidden quests during that time that I missed was very unfun. Also, way to be pigeonholed into using Zin and Agate because they're functional without arts. Like, you're stuck into Estelle and Joshua, so choose the 2 most physical characters you got left. Let's see. What else happened that is worth talking about? So that part wasn't fun. The whole ending gave me big Xenosaga 3 vibes, which was, like, a good thing because of how it capped off Trails in the Sky. Except not really, because there's another game, so we're going to talk about that one. I didn't mind it being a dungeon crawler. I thought they were going to go further with it. Like, the difficulty was more of a, no, you're not resource managing, really. It's more of a, yeah, individual battles might be hard sometimes. But you can fast travel to a heal spot very, very easily. And there are plenty of heal spots. And, like, the second plane is just Grancel. It's not even a dungeon. I wish they didn't reuse as many assets of Phantasma, honestly. And, Kevin, like, the character backstory and the development, that was great. He got a little Mary Sui and, like, oh, his power, he has, oh, cursed with the stigma. It's an evil power. His is extremely strong, and he has a lot of emotional baggage because he killed someone close to him. That works. But no, all of a sudden, I'm gonna fight the darkness with the light that's inside me. That's even more powerful than the darkness. And now all of a sudden I'm one of the most powerful characters, which didn't really like that. I thought that this was gonna be a more technology based world. Now all of a sudden the guy with the magic birthmark that can do things and also absorb the power of an artifact, by the way, is just kind of around. I dislike that part. I disliked how strong Kevin got, but I like the actual story and the actual character development, and some of the door stories dragged on a lot, but a lot of them were really good and gave a lot of closure to stuff. And it was just fun seeing things. Like, I thought the Estelle and Joshua one was going to set up them being in Crossbell, but no, they're just like, yeah, we're in Crossbell looking for Ren. And that was the whole explanation for how they show up in the next game. But yeah, what was I going to say? I did like that the Estelle and Joshua story was like the story of how they first met, and how Joshua fell for Estelle before he accepted himself as part of the family, which makes their relationship a lot less creepy in retrospect, because Joshua literally thought of her as like an object of romantic affection before anything else. And I don't think Estelle knew what the ramifications of you have a new brother is at this point. So yeah, that's fine. That it's better, at least. The Ren stuff is heartbreaking. I didn't expect it to get that dark when it came to her backstory, and yeah, that was a little rough. Especially because that wasn't even connected to Ouroboros. Like, it's a big deal that D therefore G is like more twisted and does worse things than Ouroboros ever had. That's a big thing in Zero, and finding out that, oh, Ren was horribly, horribly mistreated by an evil organization, so an evil organization that actually cares about its members is like paradise to her, and just how generally messed up she is from that. It was like, oh, that was really rough, just in general. And Tita, I'm sorry, your mom is really attractive. She says Murgurger too, which is like, I think that localization came out after Bravely Default did, so that might actually be a Bravely Default reference. But yeah, we're gonna like, Xion is still my favorite scientist girl, but I'm not gonna keep talking because I don't want to get beat up by the guy who taught Cassius goddamn bright his staff skills. Oh, there's another thing. The only real disappointment with the roster in the third was Annalise, because, all right, I figured, I knew going in that Reese was going to become playable. I also knew that Richard and Ren would be playable. And also, yeah, Ren is a lot weaker than she was as an enforcer, so thanks for making a hard boss fight into a mid to high tier character out of 16 in a group. But I knew about that. That was fine. But I was mistaken. I thought that the characters from second chapter that were playable were like the permanent ones, the ones that are there for the ending, because Annalise is there just basically for the prologue and for one side quest later. Also, by the way, there's a character called Karna who uses a gun and has the same name as Charlotte in Japanese, which I thought was funny, but there is no real connection. I mean, I guess they're both hot, but yeah. Anyway, so I thought Cassius was going to be playable in the third. I don't know why I did. I just thought, because I misremembered a plot summary, which, because like obviously you fight Cassius, but I knew about every other character that would be playable besides Annalise, and I thought that was Cassius. And like, sure, I don't mind her as a character. She doesn't really do a whole lot. She's just kind of there to be peppy and cute sometimes, and like, that's fine. I don't dislike her, but she's not really interesting at all. I wouldn't mind if she didn't show up again at all. But like, she disappointed me mostly because she was taking the place of Cassius. And also, she's not good unless you get the special weapon for her that you need to defeat Richard in a door story, and then also defeat the Nightmare Arena with that weapon equipped, which, her being there made my Nightmare Arena run a lot more difficult because she was baggage without the good weapon, since her quartz setup isn't great, so she can't do arts very well. But yeah, also, the frickin' Fist of the North Star title screen for the arena is hilarious, and like, what are the minigames are canon? I don't think Gambler Jack is. I think he's probably going to, like, actually be a real person at some point, or is based on a real person, like Carnelia was. Um, Zero retroactively makes the Estelle fishing minigame canon, which is hilarious. The arena obviously isn't canon because it's just, like, fighting Phantasma enemies. The Josette one is canon, because, I mean, I had trouble with that one. Like, I played it on normal mode, and I hope the difficulty of that minigame doesn't get harder on harder difficulties, because that was really wonky and hard to control. But yeah. Oh, also, one of the, like, just generally good parts is, like, yeah, Estelle and Joshua are the protagonists of the Sky trilogy, but it really is mostly Estelle and how she changes people around her, including Joshua, who is, like, the person who's closest to her in the entire world, so they stick together type thing. So, like, he shares protagonist roles a lot, obviously, but it's still mostly Estelle's story, and I thought that was really neat how, like, oh no, you get Joshua a lot earlier than you do Estelle, and that's, like, a big deal because everyone wants to see Estelle. They want her to show up, and it's like she was the positive uniting force on all of them, really, that changed everyone there for the better. And they're just kind of, like, waiting for her to come back, waiting for her to come back. And I think, besides the new characters, i.e. Richard and Ren, she's the last party member you get. So it's just a really wholesome moment where, like, they finally find the crystal. It's like, this one's probably still, and everyone's like, yeah, we're finally together again. We can, even though she's not the strongest among us, or, like, the most capable for dealing with the situation, we just want our friend back because it's like the moment in Infinity War when Thor shows up and Bruce Banner just, like, pops off cheering, but, like, in less of a, oh, our enemies are so screwed together, but more of an, oh, we are whole now. There's nothing that we can't do now that everyone's here. And that's just like a genuinely heartwarming and wholesome moment that's like, if I didn't care about all of these characters, then that moment would be a lot less impactful, and I'm glad we have series with, like, that are capable of handling big casts like this just for the sake of moments like that. But yeah. Let's see. I disliked all the reused boss fights in the third. I wish they kind of either had a few original ones, like there are 77 devils. Why weren't there more of the bosses just devils? And, like, a lot of the remix fights were just, alright, we're going to crank the level up on this character, and now they also have elemental weaknesses and resistances to the other three elements, except not really, because every boss is completely neutral to all elements. Bosses either have arts resistance or don't have arts resistance. It's no real elemental thing for the most part, which is kind of unfortunate, honestly. And, like, the reused bosses aren't changed too much. Half the time, their gimmick is just they summon some flunkies, and then you defeat the flunkies, and it's the exact same boss, but with more stats, but you also have more stats. So, like, the low fight was basically identical. By the way, I did not remember that the Lord of Phantasma was Rufina, or that the Schwarzritter was low. I mean, I knew that, I forgot exactly what Phantasma was from the whole thing. I just knew that Kevin's backstory was the secret to unlocking it or something like that. So I figured that... Okay, first off, I thought the whole Phantasma thing wasn't just, like, Kevin's inner demons manifesting. I thought it was an actual Ouroboros related thing. So that was different. Which meant I thought the Schwarzritter, since he showed up in the real world a little bit, I thought that he was going to be the reanimated corpse of Lo, and Joshua was going to get really pissed about that. So, yeah, I'm glad that didn't happen for Joshua's sanity, because, Jesus Christ, he should not be mentally damaged any more than he already has been. I don't know if they'll be able to bring him back after that. So that was fine. But I was able to figure out that the Lord of Phantasma was Rufina, like, way before even Kevin started to figure it out, which... I did not remember who they were. I thought they might have been someone else at some point, but I don't know. But, oh, yeah, Campanella's quiz show. I forgot about that when I was talking about the minigames. That's just... God damn it, Campanella. God damn it is the only thing I can really say. Can we move on to Crossbell now? I think we might be able to move on to Crossbell now. But, yeah, so, what was I going to say? I like most of the characters. There are not. Let's see. I think everyone roasting Lloyd for being good with the ladies, even though he's like, I do not want pussy right now. is I think that's like actually a really good shtick. Like, it's funny when you have a womanizer character like Randy, with the joke of there's another character who's like not focused on relationships right now, who like gets all the attention from women but doesn't give a shit about it. Like that's just generally a funny thing whenever it shows up. Like, Lloyd is fairly generic. Like, I think out of the main four SSS characters, Tio is probably my favorite, because that might just be because we got most of a character arc for her in the first game, and it looks like Ellie doesn't really have a character arc, honestly. She's fine. She's a fairly generic archetype. Like, Lloyd is super generic. The big thing about Lloyd is that, oh, he's self-aware of his cheesy speeches. And Randy is also fairly generic because, like, you had Olivier and Kevin in the last games, so they just kind of, all right, put the horny characters into one character this time. Wait, never mind, both Kevin and Olivier are in the next game, so hopefully they don't all interact. And, I mean, Wazy's there too, and he's, like, almost as bad. So, I don't know. Also, I think it's really funny. I was going to be like, wait, really? They have characters named Tio and Lloyd when there are relatively important NPCs in the Sky games named Tio and Lloyd? But no, they acknowledge that because when Estelle and Joshua show up, their first reaction to being introduced to the SSS is like, holy shit, you guys have the same name as friends we have. And then actual Lloyd from the previous games shows up because of the fisherman thing. And Lloyd meets Lloyd and he's like, yo, you're named Lloyd and you fish too? I like you. And that it also retroactively makes the stupid fishing minigame from Sky the Third canon, which I thought it was just like, no, this is just, we wanted to repurpose the fishing from the previous thing into a minigame, and Estelle's the one who fishes, so we're going to do an Estelle game. But apparently at some point, either during second chapter or before her and Joshua left for Crossbell, when she was just kind of wandering around her own as a bracer, like, where was Joshua in all this? I don't know, but she apparently just, like, became the best fisher person in all of Liveral, which is really funny. But I also like how they had to, like, they pulled the same thing of, all right, honestly, I'm going to say it. Trails from Zero is good. I think I like it better than Sky First Chapter, but it borrows a lot of shit from Sky First Chapter. Like, that in the beginning of the second game, it's like there are a lot of pretty similar plot beats, and it has the same really slow start, which is more unfortunate than anything. I've heard that Crossbell was made to introduce Crossbell before going into the Erebonia arc, which I wouldn't be surprised knowing the series, and I wouldn't be surprised since I think the Crossbell games take place at like the same time as the first couple Erebonia games, and like the newspapers in those games will acknowledge stuff that happens Zero Azure, but not the other way around because those weren't completely written. Although, skipping ahead a bit to Azure, just a throwaway conversation when we first are introduced to Olivier and Mueller in that game. Olivier's just like, oh, something military academy. So I'm like, god damn it, that's the plot of the next game. You're not supposed to foreshadow that hard. But yeah, let's see. What else am I talking about? I like how you know that Risha is Yin, like basically right after the chapter where Yin is introduced, and no one else knows it, and you don't even know it. The characters don't know it until the next game. I've seen on the box art that Yin is there and seems to be wearing less clothes, like Risha's normal outfit, so I'm assuming she outs herself at some point, but like, I don't know what the hell Heyo is doing right now. It might be the Italian in me, but I always like mafia characters, and Don Marconi is just Don Marconi and Garcia Rossi are just like great mobster names. Let's see. The whole gag of, wait, the SSS isn't bracers got kind of annoying, and alright, everyone likes Trails from Zero. I like Trails from Zero. I like it more than Sky First Chapter, but good lord does it like wanking off Sky. I wish they saved Joshua and Estelle for the second game, honestly, and let this one stand on its own. I feel like reading it, just the way the writers were thinking, are like, all right, this is our first Trails game without the whole liberal setting. So, I don't know if this can stand on its own. So let's just throw the previous protagonists in there and do that. Rather, I would rather they have a different Sky character show up. Like, apparently, Agate and Tita are in Cold Steel 3. Like, Olivier's in Cold Steel 3 because he's freaking Olivier. It's the arc for his country. But I'd rather like someone like Agate and Tita show up, like not the main characters, or like Zin just kind of be around. Like Kilika shows up and like, good luck figuring out why the hell Kilika's a Republic intelligence officer if you didn't already know that. Good luck knowing who the hell Lecter is if you didn't play Sky. Play Sky the Third. You won't get that stuff. You won't get the Ren stuff. And that's basically it. But that's enough where you should still play the game. Let's see. Yeah, I wish that if Joshua and Estelle had to be important characters, I wish they like held them off a little bit and let the game breathe without being like, hey, remember the game that came right before this one? Because they show up in like the first chapter. I think they might be the cliffhangers for the prologue, which is and like half the time the plot became, all right, let's go to the Bracer Guild, let's look at the assignments, let's find out where Joshua and Estelle are, let's track them down and talk to them and see what they're doing, because for like half the game they're still more interesting than the SSS, which is, I wish the SSS had more time to breathe and like establish themselves as, no, these are the next protagonists, before they're just like, yeah, wahoo, it's the old guys. And they also just kind of like weirdly like wanking off the SSS too. Estelle and Joshua are A-rank bracers at 18, I think they are at this point, which is like a really big deal. They've surpassed Shara, they've surpassed Agate, they're well on the way to being true successors to Cassius. Like, obviously, Arios is still far better than them, and that's fine. I don't mind. I wish you got more introduced to the other bracers at the Crossbell Guild, other than like Handweaver, like, no, all the bracers there are really good, but there's also Arios who's really good, who's almost as good as Cassius. And he's also the only one besides Estelle and Joshua who's like really important. So yeah, I wish there was more of like we got to see what the Crossbell Guild is actually like, other than the super campy receptionist, because that would make it more obvious of why Crossbell likes the Bracer so much, other than just one cool dude. But they kind of like wanking off the SSS because Estelle and Joshua, poor Estelle and Joshua, they lose over 100 levels between Sky the Third and the time when they show up as party members in Zero, which is just kind of unfortunate for them. And like, I'm assuming the level cap is low like it is in Sky First Chapter, because you ended at like level 40, roughly 42, I think I was, 43 maybe. And that was it. But yeah, they kind of, I don't know why they were like, oh no, the SSS is just as strong as Estelle and Joshua are, even though they shouldn't be. Estelle and Joshua should be like Zin is in Sky First Chapter, where he's holding back half the time, and the time when he isn't holding back is the time when he's 20 levels higher than your character, so he seems ridiculously powerful. They should have done something like that and just made them like not available during the final boss, because I like fighting bosses just in general with characters who are relevant to them, which means that if you have 6 characters where 4 characters are the new protagonists and 2 characters are the previous protagonists, I'm going to use all 4 new guys in the final boss fight. But the problem is Joshua is kind of useless because his support ability is a delay, and being bosses, the final boss pieces, all of them are completely immune to that. So Estelle had CP recovery, so she was actually useful. But like at that point, I might as well have stuck like Tio or Randy. Or no, because Randy is a burn. Lloyd honestly would have been the most useful one to put out, and just have Joshua in, because Joshua is more useful than Lloyd, because he has a attack all enemies S-craft and Lloyd doesn't. I do like the continuity where they still have their super powerful versions of their previous crafts, and like Joshua's like, fuck no, I don't need Black Fang at all, I only have Phantom Raid here. Although the Ouroboros symbol is gone from the activation of Phantom Raid for some reason, which is weird. I don't know why that's the case. And like the Ren stuff, it's unfortunate, because like the stuff that I cared the most about and like maybe the most emotional, like actually got me on the verge of tears, was the Ren stuff. as opposed to like any of the stuff actually happening in Crossbell. Like, oh, by the way, the friendly professor guy is also the villain again. Also, Gnosis. It's a goddamn Xenosaga reference. The symbol of the cult even looks kind of like the Zohar too, which is just one mindfuck after another. When I mean, these games came out after Xenosaga ended, so who knows? Maybe someone liked them. I don't know. Let's see. What else do I have to talk about that well, yeah, back to the blanking off stuff. Apparently, Demon Joachim is even stronger than Weissman in his angel form somehow. That's not fully explained how that's even possible. They haven't even really explained the demonization yet, though, so maybe that will be explained later on. But and then, they're still able to beat it, and apparently Estelle and Joshua didn't, like, do so much more than the SSS compared to what the other characters did to help help out on Weissman than Estelle and Joshua. It's weird. It's like, they imply that the SSS is so much stronger than they realistically should be. Estelle and Joshua getting that powerful was a result of a lot more training and a lot more working together, and they should be leagues past the SSS. And like, even on their just Estelle and Joshua on their own probably wouldn't be able to beat Weissman, but then them plus 4 rookies who've been there are some time skips in the story, so it's been like 4 months, but they shouldn't be able to beat something stronger than him. I think that was just kind of unnecessary wank to try and justify why the new protagonists are still cool when you played through the entire game. They are cool. Then Azure so far, that's gonna be a lot of political fallout. It's like, I love the montage of getting introduced to characters and how it's like, oh, hey, remember Juliette Osborne from like that one door scene in Sky the Third? Remember Olivier, you liked him. Remember Claudia, you like her. And then, hey, President Rocksmith, we finally have a name to the face of like the guy who's probably going to be the major political leader if the Calvard arc is next. And then there's a dude from Remiferia there. He doesn't get a portrait because he's not important, which I think is kind of funny. But yeah, the beginning of it, do I think, all right, I've gotten to the point where Dudley's been playable for the second time, and like, it's another Zin thing where like when Zin starts out, he's so many levels higher than you, but because of experience scaling, you catch up to him by the end of the game, even though he's supposed to be way past you. And like, they did the same thing with Dudley, where he's like, he and Arios are like 20 levels ahead of Lloyd and Noel at the beginning, and then you catch up by the time Dudley joins the second time. So I'm at that point. So I know Dudley's going to be a recurring party member, but are they going to analyze Arios and just make him completely unusable? I don't think so, but there are only 6 party member slots, and the SSS has 6 members, so I'm assuming they're going to split up. Randy's probably going to leave at some point. Like, you got the interactions of Lloyd, Ellie, and the new characters, which I did not know Noel and Wazy were going to become members of the SSS. I thought Wazy and Wald were going to be playable. Honestly, I didn't expect Wald not to be, but I don't know, I guess Wazy's more important because he was there longer or something, and we don't really have... Wait, no, Wazy came after, I think. I don't remember. We don't really have the backstory of those guys too much, but I assume that may be explained at some point, hopefully. I don't know. Let's see. Where was I going with all of this? Well, yeah, I'm expecting that because Randy's Jaeger Corps is part of it, and like he has his own dark past, like Randy and Joshua apparently can relate to each other a lot more, and I hope Joshua and Estelle come back at some point, just for the case of Joshua helping Randy out with that. Oh yeah, I completely forgot about this. Most of the names are cool, like in terms of, oh, people from this country have names that originate from this culture or this language in real world. That not really, like, there's a bit of French in some of the liberal names, but then the royal family is Von something. And then there's like, the Evil Empire having Norse themed names is not something that you see too often, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, the naming is all over the place, but goddamn is Joshua Astray a terrible name. Like, Astray isn't even the name Weissman gave him when he remade him. Astray was the name he was born with. Like, there was a family that had kids named Joshua and Karen Astray. I wish he had a different name. It's still a little iffy because of the whole relationship with Estelle thing, but I'm glad he went back to being Bright just because it's a better name. Um, Ren's parents not being shitty people in the end, like just an honest mistake. They didn't know they deposited their daughter at like a cult doing some really dark things to children. Uh, I'm glad that they're better people. I'm glad she got that resolution, and I'm glad she doesn't resent her parents or her new little brother. I just wish they did actually get to interact, which is unfortunate. But like, she's apparently part of the Bright family now, which I don't know how that works, but sure. Maybe all three of them are going to show up in a later game. Okay, so the whole two party members you wouldn't expect to join the party at the end of the game thing. So, obviously, in second chapter, that is Mueller and Julia. I expected Julia to come back at some point because she's playable for that one boss fight way earlier in the game, but other than that, didn't expect Mueller to be playable. I think you get Josette after them. No, you don't. You do not get Josette after them. Mueller and Julia are there just for the final dungeon, I think. So, yeah, there's that. And then for a third chapter, everyone thinks, all right, we got Estelle out. We have 14 people, I think it is. I don't think there's anyone in between Estelle and the surprises. But then, no. Ren and Richard are left. And they're really powerful, and no one was expecting them to show up or be connected there. So that's interesting. And then, as a testament to how much they've grown, your surprise, uber powerful two party members who you get for the final dungeon in the next game are Estelle and Joshua. I think that's a great sense of showing character growth through gameplay in a novel way. I think that's really cool. Yeah. I think I already mentioned how much I hate how Joshua looks in the Zero art style. But I don't know where all this political fallout is going. I assume someone is actually going to end up getting assassinated because there are too many people trying to assassinate other people for that to not happen. So, yeah. Let's see. What else? Are we going to get more party members? Like, there's Ouroboros influence because Campanella is Campanella. And apparently there's going to be another Anguis. So, I don't know if there's going to be a Septarian in Crossbell. Because there's, like, the weird Phantasma-like places. And, yeah. But anyway, what I'm expecting is... I don't know if Arius is going to be playable again. Especially because the SSS has 6 members. So that is a big deal because there's 6 party slots. And I'm assuming that because of his backstory and his interactions with the Red Constellation, Randy's going to leave at some point. So there's going to get a 5-person party where there's a bit of time where it's everyone except Randy. Because there was everyone except Tio before. So it's just going to be just Tio and the new recruits. And then Lloyd and Ellie, who are apparently destined to be a couple. But they're, like, honestly the blandest characters in the game. So, Dudley is freaking what if Night Eye and Deku fused, and I like him just because of that, so that's interesting. I love how his freaking S-Craft is, no, he's a gun user. He uses like a modified super powerful orbital pistol, and I think he has a gunpowder gun as well too. I might be thinking of Tita's Gatling gun also, but oh yeah, freaking Olivier has his machine gun loot, which is also great. I still haven't even considered the fact that Olivier, Mueller, Julia, or Chloe might be temporarily playable too, which is just kind of ridiculous to think about. Bring back all the Sky characters, apparently. Again, Tita and Agate are in Cold Steel, so... And Campanella's in that one too. Whatever. Campanella infuriates me, and I don't even know why. He just is. His existence is annoying. Not annoying and he's a bad character or a badly written character. He can apparently break the fourth wall, which gives so many implications, but yeah. Let's see. Yeah, Lloyd and Ellie are probably the most generic characters. They're really bland. They're not bad, they're just kind of bland. And the game seems to be forcing them. Lloyd has a harem, so he's like... Out of characters who actually like him, like actually romantically, Ellie... Tio might. Noelle definitely does. Both Dancer girls might. I hope Cecile doesn't, because that's kind of creepy. Like, the only character who it kind of makes me about people being horny, about like Randy constantly talking about how hot she is and all that, is Cecile, because like he's right, she is hot, but he keeps doing it after he learns that she was Lloyd's dead brother's ex-fiance or fiance when he died. So like I feel like if he was as much a bro as he is every other time, he'd kind of lean off on that. But I guess like it has been 3 years, so he might think that she's gotten over him at this point is like, has a chance, but the thinking that she and Lloyd have a chance is weird. But anyway, lots of girls like Lloyd. He's kind of a harem protagonist, which is, they handle it decently well, and most of the time it's brought up. It's just the fact that Lloyd doesn't give a shit, which is funny, but yeah. So Randy's backstory is going to happen. I don't know if the Red Constellation show up in future games, but like, Erebonia has more Jaegers, so assuming the entire core isn't wiped out, they're probably going to be around or at least mentioned. Zephyr might do something. I don't know. I have no idea what Heyo is planning, but my guess is going to be either the Empire or Crossbell is going to try to make a power play and take over, or not the Empire or Calvard. Sorry, is going to try to take over Crossbell. It's 3 in the morning. I've been recording for like 3 hours in an hour and a half video. I think I'm petering out. Basically, I really like these games. I don't think Azure is going to be my favorite because it looks like ass right now. But yeah, I'm excited to keep playing, which I'm going to do in the morning. Yeah. Someone's going to try to take over Crossbell. Ouroboros is going to do something to be more Ouroboros-based plot. I hope Arios doesn't die. We're going to find out what the hell Kia is, and I barely mentioned her, but she's adorable. She just doesn't really do much yet, although she's apparently God, which is, sure, whatever. Just throw that out there. Ouroboros might want her for something, but they're easily capable of kidnapping her if they really wanted her for that. Maybe she needs to be awakened as something. The cult might still be out there. D therefore G is a terrible name. If you use the math symbol, if you just write it out, that's fine. Death the cult's completely gone. Ouroboros might want to steal the research. I haven't seen any of the decoded stuff from the previous game yet because I kept forgetting to check that and show my combat notebook in to get those rewards, which that's money, so I might be able to fix the money issue. Let's see. I don't know how this is going to end because it has to end open-endedly enough where there could still be another story about Lloyd and the SSS later on. So I don't know. I assume that Ouroboros is going to try to do something, succeed in doing something. Maybe that destabilizes the politics, which allows someone to make a power play. The Yakuza might do something. I don't know. Risha is a Yakuza assassin, so presumably she's going to leave them at some point. Or they're going to just straight heel turn, which I don't know. But yeah, I hope Arios doesn't die, because he seems like the kind of person who would be useful to have around later. Yeah, Cassius can't bail you out everything. Although, also, it's kind of ripping off Sky First chapter, but I love how the final boss is like a similar pattern where there's a character comes in at the last minute, destabilizes them, and allows you to completely beat up on them and destroy them for the final phase. I love that's just good character development for Ren, because like Cassius showed up to bail Estelle and Joshua out in first chapter. He is their family member, like without a doubt. And then right when Ren fully decides she's going to be part of their family is when she comes in and swoops in and does the same thing to save Joshua and Estelle and their new friends, which I think that is like a nice payoff that would not have happened if Ren was only in one game and wasn't in like 3 at this point. But yeah, I'm assuming at some point, like once Ouroboros fulfills their plans and you fight the Grandmaster, they're going to do like the Crisis crossover that Xeno will never get to see of everyone teaming up. Or Cassius might be able to just beat him on his own, because that's how Cassius works, apparently. I don't know. That's why Cassius isn't playable, I know that, but I just wish he was at some point. Because goddamn was the fight against him in Sky the Third kind of terrifying. And yeah, until next time, this is Loxon signing off. My throat is gone. Oh, also, I completely forgot that Reese is there as an agent of the Gralsritter, and we got to see what Calvard looks like at one point in the intro. I don't know. The Archbishop's clearly going to find that out at some point, and that's going to be a big deal. Reese might be playable. She might tag along for some part. That would be kind of ridiculous. You get, like, Reese, someone from Calvard, maybe? I don't know. And then the SSS. It's ridiculous. I can't wait to see what happens, and yeah, goodbye.